Seams crystals, a rare material of pure mana or magical energy in physical form. These are formed naturally through fissures throughout a large area simply known as the lands. When too much magical energy is formed under the planet, it explodes to the surface and creates chunks of these crystals. These crystals can unlock hidden potential in humans, allowing them to use magic, something they haven't been able to do since the humans lived in harmony with the elves, before they became extinct in the Great Elf War. Enter Locke, a human who's obsessed with books and the knowledge that they hold. Locke is a young adult who's snarky, short with people, and keeps to himself. He's not mean to people, he just tends to be direct with them. He does possess a kind heart, though, but he's just reluctant to show it. His parents were leaders of his hometown, Drassel, and since their passing, his grandfather has fallen into that role. Locke's not interested in leading people, he'd rather learn more about the lost elven civilization, because when he has to lead and make decisions, people get hurt. People throughout the lands can't leave their town for the threat of monsters. Without Seams, most people wouldn't stand a chance against them. Lucky for the people of Drassel, if there's something that needs to be smacked, cut, or chopped, just call Ardra, the only person who Locke would call a friend. The townsfolk found Ardra one day, nearly unconscious and covered in monster wounds. Ardra refused to talk to anybody, and the townsfolk thought of her too strange to stay. Locke saved her by convincing the town that she should be allowed to live here, like everybody else. Over time, she opened up to people and became her normal, cheery self again. Ardra is a troublemaker, always getting herself and Locke into incident after incident. But she's so earnestful and cheerful in whatever she does that the townsfolk can't stay mad at her. Locke and Ardra's relationship was heavily inspired by Vice and Ica from Skies of Arcadia. Many things from my games, from maps to moves to ideas, were inspired by RPGs that I love near and dear to my heart. I wanted to show how well these two get along and how they play off each other. If Ardra has a terrible idea for a plan, Locke will make fun of her. Likewise, Ardra will tease Locke when he solves a problem with his big old nerd brain. They care for each other deeply, and that's one of the focal points I wanted to have for this game. People overcoming themselves with the help of those around them. So, going into the game, at the beginning, Locke and Ardra find that one of the sealed doors to their giant tree home.
They live in a giant tree, by the way.
Inside, they find that some of the children of Drassel have wandered in. But they don't know who opened up this sealed area. Before they can figure out what's going on, a monster appears and targets one of the children. Locke freezes up and wants to run to get help. Ardra encourages him to fight with her and helps defeat the monster. Upon investigating deeper into Drassel, they realize a giant Seams crystal was giving energy to their home and has been removed. If not found, Drassel will wither and die. They also notice that the Vota is at the center of their home, a world line as it were. This line surrounds the border of the lands and turns any organic life that touches it to ash. It drains the mana out of you, leaving nothing left. Upon reporting this information to Locke's grandpa, they're both given Seams crystals and tasked with finding out who the culprit is. Their first destination is Fallenberg, a mining town where Ardra used to live. Ardra acts like she's fine going there, but there's a bit of strain in her voice when she comments on it. Locke tries to find Bolverg, the mayor of Fallenberg, for assistance. Bolverg is a strict but fair leader. Like Locke, he is direct with people and doesn't like to use flowery language or mince words. He was subjected to much scorn from the people of the lands when a famine hit his town. The crops started to die out and there wasn't enough food for people to go around. Regrettably, he had no choice but to exile some of the people to harsh, violent wastelands teeming with monsters. Ardra was a part of that exile, and she was the only one that lived to tell about it. Locke and Ardra can't find Bolverg, but do run into his vice, Calglaf, an almost lackadaisical man who helps train the guards with Zulk as their captain. They've reopened the mining efforts around town and have started training the residents in combat in case any monsters attack them deep within the mines. This has gone surprisingly well, and they've been able to acquire a lot of rare minerals that they can trade with other towns. Ardra greets Calglaf and asks about Bolverg's whereabouts. Calglaf greets the duo by name and escorts them to the mines where they meet up with Bolverg. Locke is able to talk to both of them about the incident that happened at their home. Bolverg criticizes Locke's grandfather for his poor leadership and inability to keep the people of Drassel safe. Ardra rebuttals that he cares for all the people of Drassel, unlike Bolverg has in the past. Bolverg has no response for her outburst. He also doesn't recognize her. After a long pause, Calglaf does bring up some information that could help out Locke and Ardra. Off to the east, there has been sightings of a new, unknown monster lurking near the forbidden elven ruins. Some say that the beast isn't from the lands, others say it is an elf. Locke excitedly gets permission from the town near the ruins to go in and track down the monster. In these ruins, Locke and Ardra find scriptures from the elves about the Great Elven War. From the humans' perspectives, the elves tried to win the war with the power of curses, forbidden magic that only the elves were able to use. The magic was too powerful for the elves to wield, and they were consumed by the curses and perished. The elves' perspective of the war is quite different. In the ruins, it states that the elves claimed victory and the human race ceased to be. Ardra, rightfully confused, asks Locke why they would outright lie about the outcome of the war. Before Locke is able to come up with a proper answer, they're attacked by the beast lurking around the ruins. A huge gangly blue creature with crystals protruding from its body, resembling that of Seam's crystal. The creature's cry pierces Locke's skull and freezes him in place, reminding him of something he doesn't want to remember, something about his parents. The creature raises its arm to strike Locke down. Again, he can't move when the time calls for it. Crash! Locke opens his eyes and sees Ardra's limp body on the ground. The fear in Locke's heart quickly turns to rage. With his eyes burning, he shouts and attacks the beast. But his strikes can't land. Locke isn't strong enough alone. Just then, a figure rushes out of the shadow and allows Locke to grab Ardra and escape. Ardra is alive, but in bad shape. When she regains consciousness, Locke asks her, "Why? Why would you do something so stupid?" To which she responds with, "Because I know you will always have my back." The mysterious figure approaches them and heals Ardra's wounds with powerful magic. The figure then reveals that her name is Evelyn. The duo is shocked to see her with pointed ears. Evelyn is an elf. They haven't gone extinct. I designed Evelyn to be a middle ground between Locke and Ardra's personalities. She's demure, quiet, and polite. She is a critical thinker like Locke, able to keep up with him and his thoughts, and like Ardra, is able to take action to help others. She carries a heavy burden on her shoulder, but hides it from the others. Evelyn explains that she came from a town far away, a place where the land from her hometown is being slowly drained of life, and journeyed to the ruins to try and find the answer to save her town. Locke notices that when Evelyn is pushed for more information, she quickly changes the topic or ignores the question completely. Though little is known about her, the duo decides to trust her, and together, the three of them defeat the beast and escape the ruins via an alternate exit. One of them leads to a town called Spia, that's on fire! The trio discovered that armored soldiers attacked the village and took most of the townsfolk as prisoners to a nearby sluice. One of the townsfolk mentions that the soldiers wore helmets with pointed ears, just like Evelyn. They had to have been elves. This greatly upsets Evelyn, saying that should be impossible. Locke doesn't think that they can do anything to help those that have been captured, but Ardra and Evelyn convince Locke that they should rest for the evening and try to free the prisoners the next day. Locke asks Evelyn more about her past and information on the elves. As she tries to talk to Locke, a dark energy surrounds her and she shrieks in pain and falls to the ground. Evelyn recovers after some time, but is unable to tell them what just happened. Locke concludes that Evelyn has been cursed, preventing her from sharing certain information with them. They let Evelyn rest and refrain from asking more on the subject. In the morning, the trio heads out to the sluice, rescuing the prisoners and discovering that they were told to mine the sluice for Seam's crystals. Ardra mentions that there were a lot of recent tracks at the elf ruins too. There was also mining work being done there as well. While freeing the prisoners, the group runs into the elven soldiers and a fight ensues. The group wins the skirmish and are able to knock out and tie up the guards. They then unmask them to reveal that they're just normal humans under the guise of elves. Something's not adding up. Locke decides to travel back home to warn his grandfather about the new issue. On top of a rainy summit on their way back to Drassel, Locke runs into a familiar face, Calglaf. He's rushing to Spia with guards in tow. Calglaf tells Locke that they heard Spia was attacked and came to help. He notices Evelyn, and Locke introduces her as a friend from Spia. Calglaf is brought up to date on recent events. He's shocked to hear that humans would attack one another like this, let alone disguise it as an elf attack. He thanks Locke and Ardra and offers to escort Evelyn back to Spia. There's a tingling in the back of Locke's neck. Something's not right. In a panic, Locke says, "Calglaf, why did you steal our seams crystal?" The whole scene goes silent. Only the rain can be heard. Calglaf stammers in shock, baffled by this claim. The same group that stole their town's seams crystal must be the same group that was mining in the Elven ruins and the same people who attacked Spia. They must want seams crystals for something. But what? And Calglaf, who is he? He became the vice of Fallenberg some years ago, but nobody knows where he came from. Just that he helped stop the famine that plagued the town. And how did he know his and Ardra's name even though they've never met? The group behind this would have to know the lay of the land, like the sluice and the ruins, even though nobody should be allowed to go in there. Somebody with a high status. Locke brings up point after point against Calglaf, who has a response for each accusation. He reaffirms that he did not steal Drassel's vignette. Evelyn steps forward, clarifying that that word is an old Elvish term for grand crystal. Frustrated by his slip-up, Calglaf admits he did so and orders the guards with him to restrain the three. During the fight, the group is overwhelmed, and Locke freezes up again as he is about to be struck by an arrow. Ardra forces her way between Locke and the bolt, forcing Ardra to take the arrow to the chest and falls to the ground. During all of this, Evelyn's hood is removed, exposing her as an elf. Seeing Ardra on the ground and Evelyn being taken away, Locke feels like he's losing everything he cares about again. He falls unconscious. Locke wakes up underground in a cell with Ardra. They both notice that Evelyn is nowhere to be found. A familiar voice greets them. It's Bolverg. He explains that Calglaf and him are working to gather seams to build an army. Bolverg has been researching the seams, the world line, and the Elven ruins. He believes that the elves never went extinct and are going to attack humanity soon. Humans have grown complacent in their lives and have become weak. When the elves attack, we will be wiped out for good. This time, we must strengthen ourselves for when that time comes. Locke comes to a realization. The groups posing as elves were Bolverg's own men. He was going to have them kidnap the people of Spia, have them gather seams, and then be defeated by his own guards. That would unite everybody against a common enemy. Bolverg leaves to interrogate Evelyn. Locke and Ardra do manage to escape and chase down Bolverg to a volcanic area, where they find Evelyn. Bolverg reveals to Locke that at the end of the Great Elf War, the elves put a curse on humanity, trapping them in the lands. The Vota isn't the end of the world, it's the beginning of it. It's a barrier locking out mankind from the rest of the world. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, mankind has been forced into this cage of the elves' making. Unable to grow, unable to change, but Bolverg plans on fixing that. The group are able to reunite at the cost of Bolverg escaping. They regroup back at Fallenberg, where they review what's happened so far and how Bolverg intends to break the Vota. The group eventually figures out that Bolverg plans to channel the Vota into several large seams crystals that he's taken, in the hopes of overloading it and shattering it. Evelyn, at the cost of activating her curse, explains that doing that would create an explosion large enough to wipe out Fallenberg and then some. Locke's grandfather reminds him that Bolverg is very stubborn and doesn't believe he can be stopped with words or actions, implying that Locke may need to take his life, something that goes against the decree of humanity. Locke refuses that notion and claims he'll find another way to settle things. After an introspective night, either Ardra will talk to Locke about her frustrations with Bolverg, or Evelyn will talk to him about her aspirations for the future. The following morning, the group heads out to the final area of the game to confront Bolverg, after doing a bunch of endgame side quests. They track down Bolverg to a hidden area under Fallenberg, stockpiled with armor, weapons, and seams, perfect equipment for building an army. While journeying through this secret armory, Locke triggers a trap, separating him from the girls. Alone, Locke is approached by Calglaf once again. He explains that Bolverg's attempt at defusing the Vota could work, but agrees if he fails it would cost the lives of the people of Fallenberg. Calglaf has no plans on stopping him though. He has his own agenda. He tells Locke that he needs Evelyn and proposes a deal. Hand her over and he and Ardra can live safe and sound, go wherever they want. He goes on to state that Locke isn't the heroic type, not the type of person to spring into action like this. Locke refuses to hand over Evelyn, much to Calglaf's surprise. Calglaf readies to fight Locke with the intent to kill. The two clash. In a quick series of maneuver, Locke miraculously gets the upper hand and disarms Calglaf. He curses in shock that he could have ever lost the Locke. Calglaf stumbles for a moment as he loses his concentration, and a spell he's been channeling dissipates. Calglaf's ears turn pointed. He's also an elf. He blames his loss due to him constantly supplying mana for his spell, and vows to come back with Evelyn before making his escape. Before heading on, Locke asks Ardra her reason for doing all of this, for trying to stop Bolverg. Well, Ardra starts, because in my heart, I know it's something I have to do. Locke thinks about her response before moving on. Finally, the trio reaches Bolverg, already in the process of channeling up the large seam crystals to break the Vota. The group tries to reason with Bolverg, that it's dangerous, that an understanding could be reached, that there's no need for bloodshed. Bolverg retorts each point brought against him. He then speaks to Locke. Your parents opened me up to this idea in the first place. Locke begins to turn pale. He continues. Your parents were convinced that there was a world outside the Vota, that if they could harness the power of the Seams Crystal, they could break through. I tried to stop your parents, reason with them, but they wanted to use you as a subject. When I went to confront them on that fateful night, your father and mother ran into the Vota. They were going to use you as a puppet for their own gain. Locke's memory of the event was different. His parents shielded him from a monster attack. He couldn't move, and his parents provided an opening for him to escape. They saved him. Locke's vision becomes blurry. He begins to feel sick. His throat dries up. He feels like he's going to pass out. Ardra snaps Locke out of it by telling him that she doesn't know what happened that day, but she knows that his parents would never try to hurt him. They loved him. Locke snaps out of his stupor and calls Bolverg out on his hypocrisy. His willing to use anybody as tools to further his ambition. His people, friends, children, even Locke's parents. But most of all, he can't stand that he doesn't have the freedom being trapped in the Vota. The room grows silent. Realizing that nobody will back down, they have no choice but to fight. Spells are cast, blades clashed, and limits are broken. Bolverg seems to be out of options. But Evelyn realizes that he's been dividing his attention this entire time. He's been working on the Seams and Vota whilst fighting. Seeing no other choice, Bolverg decides to give the party his full attention. He reaches out his hands to Drassel's Seams Crystal and absorbs its power, transforming Bolverg and crystallizing large chunks of his body. Bolverg strikes back. His new form is too much for the group. They're quickly being overwhelmed by Bolverg's renewed strength. Fearing for his life, Locke is stunned in place. Again, Locke can't move. And again, somebody he cares for is about to pay dearly. Locke is able to take the first step forward. He jumps in front of Ardra, parries Bolverg's attack, and pierces him with his spear, all in one fluid motion. The fight is over. But the wound that Bolverg was given is fatal. As Bolverg lays on the ground, the color quickly drains from his face. He tells Locke that the responsibility of mankind now falls on him. In 2 years' time, the Elven army will invade the lands. He must prepare for it or face extinction. Before Bolverg can say more, he passes away. The commotion of their fight brought every guard to their area. With no time to explain themselves, the group flees. Knowing that there's nowhere in the lands that they can hide, Evelyn comes up with a plan. They would go to the world's edge, the Vota, where Evelyn reveals that she plans on cursing Ardra and Locke. She would give them part of her blood so they would have elven blood running through them, and therefore be able to pass through the Vota. As Evelyn prepares, Ardra noticed Locke's state. He's still in shock from what he's done. Am I just like him? Ardra takes his hand. You didn't do anything wrong, Locke. If you didn't act, I wouldn't be here right now. You wouldn't be able to feel the warmth of my hand. The worry on Locke's face fades, if only for a moment. With the preparation finished, Evelyn starts the ritual, and as quickly as it started, it ends. Now not human nor elf, Locke and Ardra, along with Evelyn, are able to pass through the Vota to the true world. And what awaits them next? I can't really tell you why I love RPGs, whether it's the story, characters, combat, or music. Something about them is just endearing, activates some neuron in my brain and keeps me coming back again and again. I spent 3 years creating something I would like to play in the hopes that others with similar interests would find enjoyment in it. So, I'll try to learn from this, try to grow and keep moving forward. So promise me, you'll do the same.